Imagine the scene, a college auditorium on a cold February morning. What was meant to be a simple prayer meeting turned into something much bigger. Instead of an hour, the meeting lasted for days. Thousands of people of all ages and from all parts of the United States gathered. Tears streamed down faces that before seemed indifferent. Voices united in fervent prayers and songs that echoed for hours on end. The Asbury Revival was not a spectacle. It was a spiritual phenomenon that began quietly and spread like an uncontrollable fire. It transcended the campus, the city, and the state, touching the heart of an entire nation at a time of deep social unrest. Prepare to embark on a journey through time and discover every detail of this movement that proved that faith still has the power to transform lives and inspire generations, leaving an indelible mark on the history of faith in the United States. The story of the Asbury Revival takes us back to 1970 in Wilmore, Kentucky. At Asbury College, a small institution of higher education with a strong Methodist tradition, the academic routine was suddenly interrupted. After a morning service, a small group of students decided to remain in the auditorium, motivated by a deep desire to seek spiritual renewal. The prayer meeting, which initially had only about a dozen young people, began to stretch for hours. Reports of transformative and genuine repentance experiences began to spread like a whisper across campus. Soon, that whisper became a shout of faith. The local community, and later people from all over the country, were drawn to this spontaneous movement, which seemed to defy the logic and conventions of the time. This video is a deep dive into the most significant moments, the powerful testimonies, and the lasting legacy of a revival that, more than 50 years later, continues to remind us of the power of faith and collective prayer. You will meet the people behind this story and the impact that their transformed lives had on an entire generation. The seed of this revival was planted in a small group of Asbury College students. After a church service, Hughes Chapel was the stage for a moment of pure surrender. A feeling of spiritual discontent, a search for something deeper than the religious routine, led those young people to their knees. They had no plan, no schedule or official leader. What they had was a burning desire to connect with God in a real, palpable way. They prayed without stopping, confessed their sins to one another, and shared their struggles. The intensity of that moment was so strong that, instead of going to their classes or appointments, they stayed. News of the continuous prayer began to spread through the dorms and classrooms. Students who walked by the hallway felt compelled to enter. Skeptics came out of curiosity and ended up kneeling. The chain of prayer, which started with a few, grew to dozens and then hundreds. The movement was not confined to the auditorium. Prayer groups emerged in dorm rooms, in corners of hallways, and in campus gardens where the young people gathered to intercede for their lives, their families, and the world. Professors and college leaders were the first to notice the changes. One student, who was previously known for his rebellion and indifference, began to demonstrate a joy and compassion that surprised everyone. Another student who struggled with insecurity and anxiety found a profound peace. The behavior of many students changed visibly. They became more attentive to one another, more dedicated to their studies, and more engaged in helping the less fortunate. The revival was not just an event in the chapel, it was a silent but powerful transformation that was beginning to reshape the campus culture. The reports of spiritual experiences that emerged from the Asbury Revival are proof of its depth. It was not a passing euphoria, but a genuine and impactful transformation. Participants reported moments of intense emotion, which ranged from spontaneous tears of repentance and liberation to laughter of pure joy that seemed to spring from the depths of the soul. The songs were not rehearsed hymns, but improvised melodies sung by voices united in worship. Many described a feeling of profound and unshakable peace that replaced anxiety and restlessness. The stories were so powerful that they attracted even the most skeptical. As the movement grew, Asbury College was transformed. The prayer meetings, which began with a small group, expanded to hundreds of students. Hughes Chapel, with its classical architecture, became the epicenter of an intense and uninterrupted faith. Students stayed up all night in prayer, taking turns to ensure the service continued. Classes were suspended. Classrooms, hallways, and even the cafeteria became spaces for worship and testimony. Young people who were once just classmates united in a cohesive community, where the search for forgiveness, guidance, and spiritual strengthening became the priority. The college leadership, initially cautious, quickly realized that something genuine and profound was happening. The college president, Dr. Kinlaw, instead of trying to control the movement, decided to join it. He and other professors noticed visible changes on campus. Bullying and gossip rates dropped dramatically. Student grades improved, and many began to engage in volunteering and community aid activities. The revival, which started as a moment of personal prayer, was becoming a collective phenomenon that impacted not only individuals, but the entire college culture. Asbury College became a beacon of hope, demonstrating that authentic faith can create a vibrant and compassionate community. The reports of healings and liberations during the Asbury Revival are some of the most remarkable and fascinating aspects of the movement. Numerous stories of physical healings and emotional restorations began to spread. A student who suffered from a chronic skin condition which made him feel ashamed and isolated was healed after a collective prayer. His skin cleared, and he felt liberated from shame. Another student, who struggled with an alcohol addiction, reported having such a profound encounter with God that her compulsion simply vanished. These extraordinary experiences attracted the attention of people from off-campus. Visitors from other states with physical and emotional ailments came to Asbury College, eager to witness what was happening. The collective faith, which grew stronger every day, created an environment of miracles. An elderly woman who was about to undergo high-risk surgery to remove a tumor reported being completely healed after the students prayed for her. The academic community, which was previously based solely on logic and intellect, began to witness real and tangible transformations. What sets the Asbury Revival apart from other spiritual movements of the era is the reaction of religious leaders. Instead of a reaction of skepticism or concern, most Methodist pastors and leaders observed the movement with interest and admiration. Many of them, who were in search of spiritual renewal in their own congregations, participated in the meetings. They witnessed the spiritual fervor of the young people and were touched by their dedication. A Methodist pastor from a conservative church reported that, upon seeing the purity of the young people's worship, he felt ashamed of his own faith, which had become lukewarm and formal. He returned to his church with a new fire, replicating the practices of continuous prayer. The institutional support was fundamental for the revival to expand in an organized way. The college leaders, instead of trying to control the movement, gave it space to grow, ensuring that the focus remained on prayer, worship, and testimony. This interaction between the leadership and the students helped legitimize the phenomenon and inspired other ministries to replicate similar practices of intense prayer. The revival showed that cooperation between the energy of youth and the wisdom of experience can be a powerful force for good. In a few weeks, what began as a local movement became a national phenomenon. News about the revival spread through newspapers, magazines, and, most importantly, over the radio. The simplicity and purity of the movement attracted the attention of churches and colleges across the country. Religious leaders from different states visited the Asbury campus to witness the phenomenon. They took the experience back to their communities, creating waves of faith that spread rapidly. Churches in Texas, Florida, California, and dozens of other states began to adopt similar practices of intensive prayer and worship. Reports of extraordinary experiences inspired thousands of people to seek spiritual renewal in their own communities, creating a wave of faith that spread rapidly across the United States, influencing the country's religious and social culture. The movement also inspired the founding of new ministries and organizations, which aimed to replicate the Asbury experience. The revival proved that a small movement with a pure intention can have a global impact. The impact of the Asbury Revival extends to this day. Many of the young spiritual leaders formed during that period became pastors, missionaries, and founders of ministries that still exist. Pentecostal and Charismatic movements, which became popular in the following decades, were influenced by these intense experiences of prayer, praise, and spiritual manifestations. Furthermore, hundreds of personal testimonies report how the faith acquired during that period shaped life decisions, relationships, and professional vocation. Many of the young people who participated in the revival became leaders in their communities, carrying with them the passion and dedication they experienced at Asbury. The revival proved that genuine encounters with God can generate permanent changes, both individual and collective. It demonstrated that faith can be a force for good in society, inspiring people to live more just, compassionate, and meaningful lives. The legacy of the revival is not just a collection of stories, but a living reminder of the power of faith and prayer. The depth of the revival's impact is best understood through the personal stories of its participants. One young woman who came to the Asbury campus with a broken heart and a life of destructive habits found forgiveness, peace, and the strength to change. She reported that after a group of students prayed for her, she felt a liberation so profound that her life would never be the same. Another student, a Vietnam War veteran who was struggling with post-traumatic stress, said he found a peace that the world could not give. He reported that his anxiety had decreased dramatically and that he was able to forgive himself and others. These personal experiences not only changed the lives of individuals, but also transformed their family and professional relationships. Families were restored, relationships were healed, and new life purposes emerged. Many of the young people who participated in the revival reported a feeling of lasting peace, spiritual clarity, and an intense connection with God, which influenced their academic, professional, and social decisions. The revival was a reminder that faith is not a theory, but a living personal experience. The Asbury Revival was such an impactful phenomenon that the media and society could not ignore it. Newspapers and magazines from across the country began to cover the movement, drawing national attention to what was happening at a small college in Kentucky. Skeptical reporters and experienced journalists visited the campus to witness for themselves. What they saw was not uncontrolled euphoria, but a community united in prayer and worship. The revival became a reference for intense faith experiences, demonstrating that collective spirituality could create concrete and visible changes. Society, which was going through a time of great unrest and distrust of institutions, was surprised by the purity and sincerity of the movement. The Asbury Revival proved that faith is not just a set of rituals, but a force that can generate real and lasting transformations. The Asbury Revival reminds us that faith has the power to transform. The intense, collective, and genuine experience that began with a small group of students in 1970 inspired generations, showing that deep encounters with God can happen anywhere, at any time. This movement left a spiritual, cultural, and social legacy that continues to influence people around the world. It reminds us that the search for authentic faith is a journey worth taking. The Asbury Revival was not an event of the past, but a living reminder of the power of prayer and community. It challenges us to seek the same fervor and dedication in our own lives. If you were moved by the story of the Asbury Revival, subscribe to the channel, like and share this video. Discover more stories of faith that change lives and continue to inspire people around the world, and join our community on the journey of faith. The Asbury Revival is living proof that faith has the power to transform. Your life could be the next testimony. And you, would you be ready to experience something like this? A science professor who saw faith as a mere psychological construct went to the auditorium to observe and document the phenomena. He intended to prove that it was all mass hysteria. However, he was confronted with an environment of such sincerity and purity that he felt humbled. He reported witnessing the healing of a student who suffered from a chronic back problem and the liberation of a student who was struggling with a drug addiction. The professor ended up kneeling at the back of the auditorium with tears in his eyes and had a personal experience that changed his own perspective on faith. These experiences were not just emotional, they resulted in a lasting, internal transformation. Many students said they had a clear vision of their life purpose and vocations. The revival proved that faith, when lived authentically, can be a powerful force for personal and collective change. The revival proved that faith is not just a belief, but a force that can have a concrete and visible impact on people's lives.